Open up the mics. It's time for TRN Talk. Welcome, everyone, to TRN Talk, a new talk show-based podcast series on the Retro Network. And basically, we're just going to pick up our microphones, and anytime a topic comes up we want to talk about, we're going to jump on the air and grab whoever we can and whoever's interested to come on and podcast with us. Today we've got two guests on the show. I'm Jason. I'll be your host for this episode, where we will be talking about VHS and Betamax and probably Laserdisc, and we're going to go through the whole 9 yards of collecting old movie viewing devices on this podcast. And this was kind of a brainchild, really not of mine. It was more of the two guys that are my guests today. And one of them is Adam from the Retro Network. Adam, you're here.
Hey, excited to be here. Let's take a listen to this. Oh, you know that sound. Ooh, that sounds good. Yeah, I got to pop open a VHS case. Still fresh.
Nice. Yes, let me introduce our next guest before we get into all this. But our next guest is Chad from the Horror Movie Barbecue. How are you doing, Chad?
I was doing well until Adam's over there sniffing VHS and, opening and sticking God knows what in the VCR itself. Hey, guys.
Literally, my wife sent me an image yesterday on Facebook that was a Blockbuster scented candle.
Oh, dear gosh.
And I was just... Oh my gosh! I just want to smell. I want to see what it smells like.
Oh gosh! You know what? This is not my actual podcast, but I'm throwing down a rule right now. We are not going to be mentioning Blockbuster by name.
Okay.
Yes.
Nobody say the B word.
Yes, thank you. Oh, hate Blockbuster.
Well, we'll get into a little bit of that to begin with. Our childhood experiences, our first experiences with VHS, and moving forward. But I'm just going to throw it over to Adam real quick and Chad both, and tell the listener how this podcast all came about, because it was all like a Twitter back and forth, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Chad and I, we like to trade some ideas and fun comments back and forth pretty much every day. I feel like that's the fun thing about retro Twitter. When I look at them, it's like awesome people I get to talk to every day. And so we were just going after it, posting some photos of VHS tapes, added to our collections, making some comments. And Chad just like, you know what? If you ever just want to actually talk about this for an extended period of time, we should do a podcast, and I'm available. I'm like, yes. All right, we just set it up. Let's call the Retro Network. Let's see if they got some airtime for us.
Yes, we definitely always have airtime for both of you. And,
oh, yay.
And always airtime for talking about VHS and Betamax. If it has to come through me, I'm always saying yes to that. So I don't have a collection per se, so I'm kind of the outsider here. Like I told Adam, I'm kind of riding in the car, and I'll probably have my head outside the window for a lot of the conversation. But
Chad's behind the wheel. Look out!
Oh gosh. Yeah, you know what? If Michael May couldn't really contain me on his show, I don't know what chance you guys have. Sorry, but it's the truth.
We're gonna get you in the Hannibal Lecter getup, Chad. We'll release you.
Hello.
All right. Well, we are here. I know these two guys have. Okay, just give me a number. Give me a ballpark number of how many VHS tapes you own, Chad.
Well, honestly, I've been kind of clearing them out. I'd say probably about 40 at this point, but there was a point when it was up to I'd say between 300 and 400.
Okay.
Yeah, this is interesting. Yeah, because we have that perspective. Chad's someone who's kind of getting out of the game, still has the appreciation, making some space. I, on the other hand, am full in the middle of it right now. The obsession is strong, and I had held off on counting the number of tapes in my collection. I didn't want to have to comment to my wife when she asks. I didn't want to have that knowledge. But I did it this morning. I have 800 tapes in my home office right now.
Crap.
I don't know how this happened in a 2-year time span, but it's probably going to the thrift store every day.
You literally like wallpaper a room, like
Yes.
3 walls with VHS covers.
I mean, shelf space, bins, closets. I find a place to put them all. Display shelves, you know. So yeah, it's wild.
Okay, so I'm kind of in the middle of that because I haven't counted them. I would estimate at least 100 that I have, and that's including ones that I have recorded 25 years ago that are still sitting out in the garage.
Yeah, that's mine too. Yeah,
hours and hours of Planet of the Apes movies and the Pink Panther. But we'll get into a little bit of that. But let's start out by just what was your first experience with getting a VHS player, watching movies at home? Maybe it wasn't VHS, maybe it was Betamax or Laserdisc or, you know, all those different types we had back in the day. Let's start with you, Chad, since you're a guest of the Retro Network, and just tell me what some of your early memories are and kind of the aura around having movies at home.
Sure. Well, I'll be honest, you know, my dad was a big like gadget guy, so you know, a lot of that stuff we had, you know, we did have a beta and a VCR. So, you know, we had both, and we would, you know, always go to the video store and, you know, just we would rent both, you know, so that way if some movie wasn't available on beta, we would have it on VHS or vice versa. So I definitely remember, you know, at a very early age renting, you know, and even recording stuff off TV, and that kind of, I'm sure we'll get into that in a second, but you know, that certainly became a big theme of my life. But yeah, no, early on, I mean, my dad loved his movies, you know, he loved TV, and, you know, thankfully my brother and I were able to kind of reap those rewards, you know, at a time when this was really getting huge.
Gotcha. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I feel like the Betamax versus VHS somehow passed by our family, or by the time we decided to get a VCR in 86, I think at that point VHS was pretty much, you know, going strong. So we had a VCR for sure. And what was interesting, though, is that my dad somehow, somewhere along the line, got a CED disc player.
Oh!
Now, people know Laserdisc because it was like a giant CD, you know, that was like late 80s, early 90s when that was going strong. But CED was it was in a plastic case, and there was like a record inside, basically, that had the information for the video disc, and you put it in, and just like a Laserdisc, halfway through you had to flip it over, but you would like load the disc in and pull out the case, and then put the case back in. It would load it, you'd take it out, flip it, put it back in. Like, so we had like Tootsie and Swamp Thing and like a bunch of random movies on CED. So yeah, that was kind of my experience for a very brief moment, but for the most part, I mean, VHS was a very, very big deal in our home. And I just, every moment, like you guys were talking about earlier, the tapes you recorded, I didn't even include that in my total because I have my bin of those as well. I got my Muppet Babies and everything else, Nickelodeon from the 80s, you know, on my pre-recorded tapes. So yeah, I mean, I was always in front of the VCR whenever I could. And even one time when our VCR broke, I just started recording TV on audio cassette. And I would just listen to the shows because that was all I had for a few months.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad I'm not the only one that did it. There was a while, and I'm not going to stray too far, but there was a long time where I would actually record the commentary and the matches on WWF Superstars. And I would like listen to it. And then so I'm glad I'm not the only one. Oh, thank goodness.
Wow. I remember the earliest memory I have of the whole VHS game. We never got into Betamax. I don't remember having a VCR until after my parents divorced, which was 1990. Pretty much everything up until that point was renting. We were renting the VCR with the movie at the gas station, or there was a local rental place that had both and had a decent selection of movies. But I remember, I think it was probably around 7, 8 years old. We rented a VCR and we rented Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And we rented, I don't know. I remember Harry and the Hendersons. We were renting that one. I remember renting The Dirt Bike Kid. It's just these weird movies that I remember that we rented to start. But that was probably for like a birthday that I remember getting that. It was the old top loading, VCR, the one they used like on the Goldbergs at the beginning, for the intro. It was something like that. But that was kind of my earliest memories. And then we didn't get a VCR till later, and we had a rental store in the town where Mom lived. And we were down there so much in the early 90s. It was like every weekend, it seemed like. So that's kind of my experience. I didn't have any experience with laser discs or Betamax, any of that growing up.
And Chad, let me ask you, did you notice a difference as a kid between VHS and Betamax having both?
No, I didn't really notice any difference. Although I've heard as I've gotten older that there were times that Beta had the better quality.
Mm-hmm.
But no, like I didn't notice any distinct differences as a kid.
Okay.
Was there like tracking or something like that on the Betamax like they had on a VHS player that you could adjust? Because I don't, again, I have no idea.
That's a good question.
Because I'm thinking
I'll have to ask my friend. He actually just ordered one that had like never been hooked up and had been in a box for 30, 40 years now at this point. And he plugged it in and it didn't work. So now he is on the hunt for a repairman who can repair a Betamax player.
Man. That's like looking for an 8-track repairman.
Yeah,
no
hey,
kidding.
there you go.
I was just thinking about that because obviously Laserdisc had to be a lot better quality.
Yes.
Than either of those two. I just didn't know if there was a difference between VHS and Betamax, which used tape. What really the quality adjustment there was, because up until the days where you had auto tracking, it was a crapshoot. Yeah. And then it would go. See, it always seemed like during the middle of the movie, you're like having to adjust it again or something. The next one you put in, it was different. And I don't know the technology. But, it was just.
So, but Chad, I'm actually curious because Jason was talking about his local rental place. What was your rental store experience then?
Oh gosh, here we go. Okay, some of my, and I'm not even joking or making this up, but some of my earliest memories were going to the video store with my father. There was a little video store called Vidmark Video, and it was in the same shopping plaza as Giant Food, which is the local grocery store, and a People's Drug, which I guess went on to be CVS, and a couple other like little tiny stores. And I lived in a town that was kind of like a small farm town, so you had to kind of drive like 10, 15 minutes to everything. So this was kind of the only video store in the area that a lot of us knew of. And it was just like, just nothing fancy. It was just walls and walls of videos and, lots of posters. Like I can't even tell you how many free like promo posters and stickers and keychains I walked out.
Wow.
Oh, I wish I had still. But, going in and, like I said, my dad loved movies. And, when I was adopted, my dad kind of became a stay-at-home dad. So we spent a lot of time at the video store, and we would just go and look. I'd look at like cartoons and like wrestling. And as I was getting older, I would start looking at like, obviously the horror movies, special ones with like the crazy covers. But those are pretty much my earliest memories. I do have one fun story, but I don't know, maybe I should save it for a little later when we kind of go into specific stories of like VHS and video stores. Okay. Yeah, but a lot of great memories at that Vidmark Video. I kid you not, I still kind of dream about that place. I could still see the layout, the boring gray walls that they would just kind of, that were just so cheaply painted with like cheap shelving. The little counter that was just pretty much just a glass counter with all the videos behind them. I guess you would like get the cover and you would kind of give it to the video store guy, and he would give you the tape behind the counter. In fact, I went back there last November because I wanted to do a blog entry on this 7-Eleven, this Pizza Hut that hasn't been updated since, I was like 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And the video store itself, because the Pizza Hut was in the same plaza, the video store itself closed in 98. And if you go by there, whatever store is there now still kind of has like the blocked off former, like the video shoot that you would kind of drop it in after hours. Which is really
that's neat.
Cool. Oh, I loved it. I
feel like you should drop one in there and just like pry it open just for old time's sake and see what they do.
Oh, I should have done that.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had, obviously in the days before the store that shall not be named, we had a little mom and pop shop in our town too. This was suburban Southern California. They were called Video Depot. So instead of Home Depot, had your Video Depot. And yeah, same thing for me. I remember just like the brown and beige, because that was everything in the early to mid 80s, right? Brown and beige. And walking around there. And what I remember specifically was most of the videos there seemed to be like the Warner home video clamshell style. So they were very big, they all had like the same basic background, maybe a different color, but then there was just a picture from the film on the front, not a movie poster, just a still from the movie. And the one that always stuck out to me the most was Roots. Like the TV miniseries Roots, with LeVar Burton in chains on the front of that cover. It was like a 4 or 5 tape series, because it ran several nights.
Yeah.
So for me, like that one always like shocked me. I was like, what is that? But so I also remember just like, you had to get your video rental card, it was like a little credit card, basically. Yep. You just had your ID number on there. And for some reason, the poster, because like, Chad was saying, they put up posters, they take down posters, but the one that always stuck out for me, and it's the reason horror endures so much in the collecting market, but Friday the 13th, the final chapter, with just the knife through the mask, and seeing that up on the wall, I was like, I don't know what this is, but someday I will see it. And so like that just, it terrified me and interested me so much. So that was a big deal for me. And then we also luckily eventually had another store in town that was a bit expanded because it was called The Warehouse. The ad was where? The Warehouse. And it was basically like a Tower Records, if anybody knew about those, but it was or Sam Goody probably, where it was a music store, but then they also had a huge video rental section. So that was like where we ended up for our home movie collection. We bought a lot of the previously viewed tapes from the Warehouse. And so we would bring those home. So that was another store that I like to spend a lot of time in because it seems so much more expansive in their selection than Video Depot.
Gotcha. Yeah, see, up until, like I said, about 1990, we were renting from a gas station. Unimart gas stations that were all over Pennsylvania at the time. That's where we got our rentals from. There was that small other store, but it wasn't like some huge, big spectacle with posters everywhere. They probably had a few in the window, but that was it. I actually remember probably around 89 or 90, my neighborhood friend up the street, his dad went down to Unimart and rented Major League and Predator for us.
Oh.
And that was like, I was scared. And this is rural Pennsylvania, woods everywhere. I wouldn't go in the woods after we watched Predator for like a week, I was so scared. And then Major League, I mean, we're 13, probably 12, 13 years old at the time. I'm like, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, why are we watching these R-rated movies in 12?
Yeah, but you're right. That was super common, right? Supermarkets, the gas stations, and wherever. I mean, I asked my wife about her. She grew up in a small town in Montana, and literally, she's like, "Yeah, we had a store that sold like where you could basically go in and see washers and dryers and dishwashers on display and then order them, and they would be there, 4 to 6 weeks later. But in the front of that store was a video rental section because they had to have some other side business, when people weren't buying appliances. So I thought that was hilarious.
And then when we moved down to Clearfield in Pennsylvania, there was an old Kentucky Fried Chicken they converted to a video rental store. I kid you not. That store is still there and still open and still rents movies.
Wow.
There was a guy that I must be the same owner, because a neighboring town about 15, 20 minutes away, there's another silver screen video there. We always called it Kentucky Fried Video for they're still there. We live in such like hick town, Pennsylvania, that we still have video rental stores somehow. But yeah, so at that place, that's when I finally got the whole aura of renting movies and renting video games and the whole, rental market. And there's a poster on every inch of the wall, of what's coming up. But yeah, I didn't get that real young. It wasn't until I was in high school when we got into that, the whole rental thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny because up here, we have a grocery store named called Wegmans, and apparently back in the day, and this is all from my based off my wife's reports, is they used to rent videos too. I guess grocery stores would rent videos, like drugstores would rent videos at that time. I guess everybody was renting videos because they knew how much money they could make.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And so I guess the question becomes, when you talk about like the home movie collection after a while, because you rent, and then it kind of got more affordable, because in the early days, for a person to run a video shop, they could have like one copy of every movie, because the videos were literally like $70 to $90 to buy the video from the manufacturer, from the studio. So like that was kind of how you did it. But then eventually it became a home market where you could literally do you guys remember like in the early 90s when McDonald's would sell you movies, Addams Family, Indiana Jones, with your value meal? I mean, it got to that point, which was crazy.
Oh yeah.
So what were your like home movie collections like, and at what point did those get purged or lost, or did you hold on to them? That's what I'm always curious about.
Yeah, I actually still have one of the first 3 tapes I actually ever owned by myself. And my aunt one Christmas gave me E.T. and Jetsons Christmas. And I lost the Jetsons. Now that's a weird pair, but my aunt was super weird. But yeah, I still have the E.T. tape, looking at it right now. I haven't watched the actual tape in years, but I there's no way I can get rid of it. Absolutely not.
But did you guys have them like in your house? Like, were they up on shelves? Did you have the VHS drawers, like the wood panel ones?
We had the wood panel drawers. Yep. Yeah. We had I think 2 of those, and then we had several for cassettes as well, like audio cassettes. Yeah, it was like a nice little tower of faux wood.
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah.
So cheap and so ugly.
And they would fall over every time you're opening up the drawer. I mean, that's so... And so I was a huge like single fan too, and even for the cassette ones, they're so small, and you just cram them in there, and then you finally just remove the drawer. Screw it, and I'm just going to shove them in the little cabinet there. But
yeah, because that's how I feel like we had that for a long time, and then eventually like we did just move them to a bookcase because we were just like, we don't want to hide them away. We want to be able to see it. But it was always weird, like the mix of what my parents chose. So it'd be like Robert Downey Jr. in The Pickup Artist. I'm like, what is this? Or Pretty Woman, or just like all these movies I didn't have any interest in. And then I'd be like, at least Ghostbusters 2 is up there. All right, we got like, so there'd be something for me. But then eventually when I became like, a teenager, I know like in the early 90s, that's where I started like requesting for every birthday or for Christmas. Like I wanted at least one tape that was mine. And that's like where the collection. So now I have Billy Madison, or I have Mortal Kombat, or I have, what I'm saying? Like, so I started building up a little bit, and then I would start going to Suncoast Video. I don't know if you guys had those at the mall. Yeah, like those were beautiful because you get the weird stuff there. Like they had it all. So that was exciting. So, but
I might be misremembering, but didn't Columbia House have like a subscription service for movies?
Sure did.
I literally have a brochure that I pulled out of Reader's Digest right in front of me from like 1986, and yes, 100%.
So I'm pretty sure Mom was subscribed to that at some point in the early 90s. That we were getting videos that way. Because it was just like random, stuff. I'm like, Mom, what is this? Oh, I don't know. Had to be it.
I was never able to convince my mom to do that, and it used to sadden me because they had a WWF subscription line, and I tried
home video.
Yeah, well, no, it was actually a Columbia House exclusives, and they would come in these giant black boxes with the WWF logo, and they're pretty, they're cheap. The tape quality is cheap. The matches are kind of not the best, but it was all like match compilations. Mm-hmm. But I could never convince my mom to order those, and it was always heartbreaking. Thanks, Mom.
So when I guess the other question becomes then, because obviously you tie so many memories. Like I literally would spend summers. Like summer for me was picking that one movie and then watching it over and over again. So it was like Tommy Boy. Okay, I'm gonna watch Tommy Boy nonstop. Kids Incorporated, the pilot episode on VHS that I got from the warehouse. I'm gonna watch that and memorize every song, every dance number. Just random stuff like that. So like, did you guys have like the ones you became like obsessed with that you were able to bring home?
No. It was always quantity over quality for us. It was just a matter of, okay, I can get 2 out at a time. We're going to get 2 tonight, 2 the next night, and they're all going to be different. We're not keeping the same one.
Okay.
Yeah. It was all about trying to get in as many movies as we could.
Right.
And it wasn't the hugest store. So at some point I remember saying, okay, let me make my way down this aisle and we'll start getting movies from this shelf and just kind of work your way through. And
Yeah, because for me, my top rentals from the store were Ghostbusters and Supergirl. Like just nonstop, back and forth. 1 week Ghostbusters, next week Supergirl. And that was like pretty much all I watched, in those early days for whatever reason.
The pause button got very worn out after watching Supergirl, I assume.
I will say, yes, Helen Slater, even to a 6-year-old, was very alluring.
Yup.
Okay, I have a confession to make.
Uh-oh.
In the early 90s, I remember renting a copy. Hopefully nobody from Silver Screen Video is listening. I remember renting a copy of LA Confidential. You remember that movie?
Oh, yes.
With Guy Pearce, Russell Crowe. The VCR ate the tape.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember pulling it out. I remember slapping a piece of like Scotch tape on it, putting it back together, trying it out, make sure, okay, it's going to stay together, and then back to the rental store it went.
I knew exactly where you were going because I did that too. I did that with a Royal Rumble 92 tape.
It's funny that we can remember which ones those were.
It's very sad. And this is why these stores are no longer in business because of us.
Oh my gosh.
So it's weird because like when you think about it then, like they seemingly were a disposable type of entertainment. It's like, oh, they're gonna put out the movie, it's gonna sit on the shelf, maybe people will rent it, maybe they won't, but then you had cable and you're like, why do you need VHS? It's gonna be on HBO or Showtime or whatever, but not everybody had cable. But then, now years later, we are in the 21st century, and what is life like now? Everything's streaming, physical media disappearing. So why and what are we doing as we're collecting these VHS tapes? In my case, stacks and stacks of VHS tapes. Why? So that's what I was thinking. To be real interesting, Chad. I'm curious to hear from you in your collecting methods during your heyday, because like what a lot of people don't recognize if you're not deep into VHS, everybody's like, oh yeah, it's just like, there's that one where you pull the tape out and it slides out. But throughout the years, there were so many different types of VHS cases and boxes, right?
Yes.
So like you have like what's called a big box, which was essentially usually put out by the MGM United Artists label, which was like a big cardboard, like silvery box, and then they were beautiful because they had an opening flap in the front. And the tape would just sit in there. It didn't lock in or anything. It's just a little rectangle shape, and you would set it in. But it was big graphics. And that seemed to be the idea back in the day, right? It's like take up the most shelf space, get the most eyeballs, and then, that was big. And then what's another type that's pretty popular, would you say, Chad?
I'd probably say the clamshell. The clamshell seems to be picking up a lot of speed. I'd say in the last 10 years or so, for a while people were ignoring them because they were like, these take up too much space. And now a lot of people are going towards those because they like the way it looks on the shelf, and they're most associated with Disney, which is what's interesting.
Yeah. I think most people think Disney clamshells.
Yes.
But actually, like I said, in the back of the day, the Warner Home Video, they were all big clamshells, big plastic things, And then, for some reason, that became the case for like family entertainment would come at clamshell. Yes. And then, the other thing, like at a rental store, for example, they had what it's usually referred to as a cut box.
Yep.
And these are rough. These are sad sometimes because it's a hard plastic case. That's what I was popping open at the top, like you would get at most rental stores. But then it had that plastic around the outside. And what they would do is, if it was, for example, a big box, they would cut it up to try to make it fit inside. So you're cutting off graphics, you're cutting off letters, like you're just missing, a portion of it. Although some manufacturers would actually send them out for rental stores in those with like the right proportions, which is nice. Like I have a Rambo HBO video copy, and it's really nice because it's got that, or it's not technically, I guess it is. It's Rambo First Blood Part 2.
My gosh! I kid you not. I picked a Rambo First Blood Part 2 cut box up at the Savers a couple weeks ago.
Sweet.
Yes, it's so awesome looking.
And then the other style is, the slip case, like we're talking about. That's what became the most, prevalent style that you would find, which is literally just a very thin cardboard case. And then, the tape has just enough room to slide inside and slide out. Doesn't take up that much room on the shelf. It just makes things a lot more sleek. And that's normally what you're going to find in most, areas where VHS are found these days.
See, I remember like when I would go to the rental store, no matter what the case came in, you never took the case home. It was always like in front of like those cut box, just plain Jane, and they would maybe have, like you were talking about, something in there to indicate what it was, or the label you could read on the top of the the actual VHS tape. So when you saw that the cover was all the way back into the back of the shelf, you're like, oh crap, they're all out, because there would be copies of, whatever the most popular movie was at the time. And then they're just taking up shelf space. And I think that's finally what, they would shove to the previously viewed rack. Let's get rid of some of these tapes that are taking up shelf space.
We have too many copies of Baby Boat. Please take this, people.
Got to make room for Working Girl. Get that in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my experience. I'm sure back in the day, like when we were first renting the VCR and the tapes, that they were coming in their actual cases. But most of my rental experiences were we didn't have the actual case to bring home.
Right. Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was the standard practice for the most part.
I think it kind of varied from store to store because you would get, some stores would have different models of kind of the renting. They would let you take it home. Some stores would let you take it home. Some stores would actually keep the case itself. Obviously because that's pretty valuable for advertising as well. But I feel like it kind of came a little later. There were some stores that that let me take the case home, and I feel like
the way they did that was they had the plastic pinch cases.
Yes.
So they would put the video up inside, that you would squeeze it, and then it could like slip out. But the case was still protected. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you have a preference, Chad? Like when you started picking up tapes, did it matter what kind of case it was in, or to you, was it more about the film itself?
It sometimes depended on what it was. Like if it was like so with we were talking about the cut boxes in the early I want to say it's the early 90s. WWF actually, when they were with Coliseum Home Video, they started kind of toying around with bigger boxes for the tapes. So stores would kind of have to cut those if they wanted to put it in a pinch case or a snap case, whatever. So like in those cases, I kind of just wanted the tapes, and I kind of worried about the boxes later. With like certain horror movies or cartoons, I definitely wanted like uncut cases. So like if I was to find like He-Man, She-Ra, G.I. Joe, I wanted like the complete uncut box.
Yeah, because I mean, the truth be told, the value in VHS collecting has very little to do what is on the tape in many cases.
Right.
It's so much about the box art itself. That was the selling point of any video on the rental shelf or on a store shelf. If it looked cool, especially a painted cover, you were just like, oh, gotta have it, gotta see this.
God. And Adam, you and I actually did a little mini episode on Trick or Treat just last year.
On Sequelquest,
oh yes, a great podcast, by the way. Not just because I was on it, but anyway, there was sometimes when you would go in, you would not just see like painted stuff, you would see like different gimmicky stuff. Like you would see holographic, you would see like what a vacuum form stuff, you would see tapes that like light up. The movie I'm forgetting it, but there's a movie where someone's eyes are lighting up on the cover.
I know there's one, Frankenhooker. She would talk to you.
She talks.
There's an actual voice chip. Yeah. It was amazing. Yeah, they had so many great ways to grab the attention. And now, would you say, Chad, is there, because you've mentioned one genre pretty regularly here so far, but was there a specific genre for you that you were seeking out? Because again, you can't have it all. I mean, some people might want to have it all, but usually you have your focus. So where was your focus in your collecting?
So in order to kind of explain that,
aerobics videos.
Yes, thank you. I do. Okay, you guys laugh, but I actually have 2 aerobics videos I just picked up that were sponsored by 7-Up and Diet Pepsi because I wanted and the commercials are on there. So I had, so I'll try and post a video of them. Yeah. But back in the early to mid 2000s, my friend Ryan and I, our Saturday nights and our Friday nights would usually consist of video hunting because he was really into videos too, like old out of print stuff. And, this was kind of the period where I was learning more about horror and going back and kind of revisiting a lot of stuff. And this is also kind of the time that the 80s were starting to really, really hit its stride with nostalgia. So for years, he and I would go and I would be searching for like old cartoons and old horror movies and, obviously wrestling.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of where my focus went. If it wasn't easily accessible, and we're talking like the days before YouTube, we're talking before YouTube was ever an idea. And we would spend literally hours going through the racks, and we would, thrift stores as well. And I mean, my gosh, I remember he and I both actually had dual-headed VCRs, so we could actually copy a lot of these. Not really, so without incriminating myself much further. But yeah, like cartoons, horror, just weird movies that, no one had ever heard of at that point. Obviously now everything that I collected is pretty much, I'd say probably 85 to 90% all the stuff that I collected at that time or chased after and that got grays in my hair over are now on Blu-ray.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just like, I went to all this trouble and now here they are.
Yeah, well, like you said, I mean, especially, in the VHS collecting community, I mean, horror is number one for sure. And like The reason being is that horror movies weren't the ones that you were going to be able to get at a store or even through Columbia House. Like maybe A Nightmare on Elm Street, maybe Halloween, maybe, Friday the 13th. But like otherwise, like these really random, like Night of the Demons, or, one of Chad's favorites, Prom Night 2, Hello Mary Lou, like all that. You're not going to find those on a shelf at Target or at, at Kmart or anything. So the only place to get them was a video store. And then after the fact, now to find them, somebody had to have bought them when a video store was liquidating and added it to their collection, and then finally decided, okay, I'm giving it away to Goodwill because I don't want to keep these around anymore. So you find those, you're like, oh, I can't believe it,
Yep.
But like
the horror artwork was usually the best artwork, whereas like Christmas Vacation, for some reason, is the first thing that comes to my mind. That's going to have the regular poster, artwork, and just some iconic stuff on the back. Horror movies just went all out, and you would get like the bloody scenes on the back of the case, and you would see kills, and you would see, just weird stuff. So, that definitely helped my help me just want to collect as many as I could find.
Yeah, I mean, they almost become like trading cards, right? I mean, it's just based on the box art itself, and you're like, oh, I want to have this just to look at it, But you mentioned the search. Like, really, a lot of times the fun is the hunt, right? Because you got your choices. Like, maybe it's a thrift store, maybe it's a garage sale if you're lucky, maybe it's an old video store still selling tapes or going out of business. If you're desperate because I gotta have this in my collection, you got eBay, and then in some cases it's like trading with people you meet online, like Chad. Like when he was liquidating a few of his tapes last year, he put them up. I'm like, I'm getting that Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
That's right.
Got to get me a copy of Link with Elizabeth Shue. Like movies I always wanted to have, and he had them. So I was like, I will take those, sir. Thank you. So it's even bootleg copies of the Mr. Boogedy film.
Oh, gosh.
Which, again, it's on YouTube now, but I still like having it on VHS,
Yes. And it's funny you bring that up. I get more enjoyment out of trading than I do buying off people. I feel like it's I mean, obviously, when the internet first started, you had tape trading out the wazoo for every genre, of, movies, TV, even I keep going back to wrestling, but that had a huge tape trading market. But like, even now, it makes me, knowing that, I'm getting a nice tape in the mail, someone else is getting something nice. It's always a fun feeling, it's just like, I can't, I loved it.
And Chad, when's that copy of Trick or Treat coming up? Is that available? No, just kidding. But so let me ask this then, because I feel like I know we have a lot of like collecting stories, like as we were just so dedicated and continue to be. So I'll start off real quick just as we talk about the idea of trading tapes, because I have a friend. He's a guy who loves writing about the 80s. He loves it. He writes for a lot of different websites, Retro Days, writes for popgeeks.net, all this stuff. A guy named Johnny Caps, real good dude. And we've been friends for a long time. So he had a situation where he's like, I have all these VHS tapes that I want, but I don't have a VCR anymore. So could you transfer them for me? And when you transfer them, I'm going to buy you tapes for your collection as payment. So that was the trade we worked out, right? So I ended up with a copy of the Tony Danza film, She's Out of Control. Okay. Amy Dolan's as his daughter, right?
Oh my gosh.
Random film. And it was one that I always saw at the video store. It was always on the shelf. She's ripping this picture of Tony Danza on the cover. He looks so worried. So what happened was I got this tape, and Johnny loves to go to Chiller. He goes to Chiller. He goes to a lot of conventions. He's just always meeting just all the cult film stars. He loves it. He interviews them later on for articles and things. What he said was, look, I'm going to Chiller. would you like to get an autograph? And I was like, yes, I would. And so he's like, here's who's going to be there. And he's like, Amy Dolenz is going to be there. I'm like, what? And so, no, actually, sorry, my apologies. First, it was he had interviewed Amy Dolenz. And so he said, I have her address. I'll ask if she'd be willing to sign it. So he literally got her address. I send the tape directly to her. She signs it for me, sends it back, right? So it says, to Adam, love Amy. They're a little hard on there and all this stuff right on the cover. And then he's going to Chiller, and you have Tony Danza, of all people, there signing autographs. So then I send the tape with him to that. So now I have both Amy Dolenz and Tony Danza's signatures on this cover, just from this like trading relationship, you know. And so and he actually is going again this year, and he's going to get Michael Beck to autograph some things from the Warriors, and for me, it's from Xanadu. So it's going to be so fun to have that done. You know, it's like those relationships you build, they bear fruit, and it's so fun to just like access that and help one another with the things that mean the most to you, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
That's fun.
I do have, now you're talking about signed tapes.
Yeah.
And I only have, I think, one signed tape.
Oh.
And it's, have you ever heard of the movie Back in Action?
Sure, yeah.
With Roddy Piper and Billy Blanks. So, Billy Blanks, okay, let me go back. For some reason, I remember in December of 2002, Suncoast had like a big VHS blowout sale. They were like 99 cents, so I picked up a bunch. And this was one of those movies because, again, you know, I picked up this stuff that I had never heard of, or, you know, maybe wasn't widely as known. And a couple months after this, Billy Blanks was doing a signing at a health fair and expo in Baltimore. And I had him sign it. And when he looked at it, he was like, oh, my goodness. And, you know, he was just sharing stories with me and my friend and telling us, you know, how great Roddy Piper was, and, you know, how humble and what a professional he was. And less than a year after that, you know, you were talking about Chiller Theater. I went to Chiller Theater, and Roddy Piper was there, and he got a big chuckle out of the tape. And, you know, we were talking about Billy, and essentially it was a mutual admiration society between those two because they had nothing but respect for each other.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure I can say this without any doubt. I think I'm the only person in the world that has that tape signed. I can't imagine too many other tapes signed by those two are floating around, and if they are, I mean, good for you. But you know, I'm just gonna take a stab.
Put a feather in your cap there.
Yeah, seriously. And this was during the time that no one ever like getting a VHS signed. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, just like that idea that you have, and I know you're super active in those awesome meet and greet type events and making those moments for yourself. We always love seeing your pictures. So that's all. I was like, I had to assume that a VHS tape's going to work its way into there eventually.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think what's interesting, too, is a lot of times it has to do just with good fortune, right? It's like the hunt, and it's like, I want to find it in the wild. Because like we said, you can find them on eBay, and there are a few tapes that are like the prestige tapes that I wanted to have on display, you know, that I go to eBay for because I'm just not finding them. By the way, if anybody out there has a couple extra copies of Arachnophobia, I can't find that ever.
Are you serious? On VHS?
Yeah, and I'm sure people are finding it everywhere all the time, and I never run across a copy of Arachnophobia. I don't know why. So
if I ever see that when I'm out, it's yours. 100%.
Thank you.
Mental note taken. Yes.
Yes. But for me, like, one of the greatest moments of good fortune is, you know, at Goodwill, depending on where the store is, sometimes they're getting a little smartened up to the VHS collecting game, right? So they think, you know, they're going to go on eBay, they're going to check prices.
Not my Goodwill.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Don't give them any ideas. But I went to a Goodwill, and in the glass case, I saw one of the most nostalgic boxes from my childhood from the video store, which were the Family Home Entertainment FHE tapes for Transformers.
Oh.
And so they had like a stack of like 4 or 5 of them. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is amazing. But those things they're probably selling them for like $25. I look at it, $5 a tape on the price tag.
That's not bad.
Yeah, and I was like, that is pretty sweet. Okay. So like I asked for them to, open up the case. So I grabbed that. There was a G.I. Joe one from the same manufacturer. These are the ones that have like comics, graphics all over it. They're just so beautiful. So I got like, 3 Transformers tapes. I got a G.I. Joe tape. And then there was the other stack. And I go over there and they're all listed for $15 a piece. Yeah. And I made the mistake. I almost outed myself because I was like, should I be getting these for 5 or 15? Because this over here says 15. Should it be 5? And they're like, I was like, you know what? Never mind. I'm going to take these up front. Thank you anyway, because I saw them rethinking it, so but still like that was a fortunate day. And I was like, that's it live for those moments,
See, my thrift stores around here, and Goodwill included, I will see tapes like randomly recorded stuff. I mean, like blank tapes that people have taken and recorded whatever.
Really? They sell those, huh?
Yes, they will sell. I'm like, there's got to be a market for people who just want
100%.
They want like commercials. They want like whatever, knowing
Mad
when
about
when
Dracula. He'll let you know. Yeah,
that blows my mind. People are hunting down like randomly recorded tapes.
Right. People want that nostalgic, like the watching, you can watch, I'm going to go back to wrestling again, but you can watch, an old WWF pay-per-view on the WWE network. But if you can have that WWF superstars from Saturday morning with the commercials and, all the old TV spots for your local, like your local grocery store or like a McDonald's or something, a lot of people are going to want to do that, like a lot of people are going to want to see that old Nintendo ad or like, heck, even like old cartoons. If you're watching an episode of Saved by the Bell and it still has like those NBC bumpers or, commercials for like McDonald's and stuff like that. I mean, that's
the more you know.
Yes, the more you know.
And what was the
Cameron?
Yeah, what was the other one? There was another one with a bunch of celebrities.
One to grow on.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Well, and a little tip for anybody that is looking for those types of tapes on eBay, if you're searching, you have to search sold as blank VHS tape because that's how they get around being able to sell it. But like, for example, I have the thrift stores in my area will not sell them to me. They have some weird thing. They're like, anything could be on that tape and then we're liable. I'm like, what? And there have been times like when they have a new person that just puts everything on the shelf and I come with a stack of those tapes. They're like, sorry, we can't sell those to you. And like half the time I'm like, I'm going to stick these in a slipcase for, Home Alone and see if I can get them home.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I've done that before, believe it or not. I'm not proud of it, but I've done it.
Why do you need 12 copies of Speed? Yeah.
Or Titanic, because then you get 2 tapes in there.
Yes.
Saving Private Ryan and yeah.
Now the other way that I've found is a great way to do it as well is if you just spread the word to all your family and friends and let them know that you collect, the minute they start getting ready to do a garage sale or throw them out, they will call you and let you know. So that's another great tip for anybody that's like, I'd love to start collecting. It's like, start with the people you know. Just bring it up all the time.
Because, I know out here, I for the longest time, I had tremendous success. And, I like you said, the thrift stores are getting very, very wise and hip to it. So they're kind of like, they're not, people around here are kind of getting, a little bit more knowledgeable as well. So, they're gonna, not as much cool stuff is donated, and it's kind of harder to find those tapes now that I was finding like 10, 15, 20 years ago. So
yeah, absolutely.
When the well is dry, it's just like, well, okay. I mean, I'll go collect, something else. It's just like when all your resources are gone, you're just like, well, I don't want to spend $35 on a copy of Return to Oz. So I'll just end up buying it on like, a VHS or a DVD transferred copy or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
See, I finally reached the point now where I'm letting tapes go. And what I mean by that is getting them on digital or Blu-ray or something that I find for $5 at Big Lots or something. But there's certain ones that I'll keep just because they're nostalgic. I remember renting them as a kid, and if I want to watch Back to the Future, I want to pop it in the VHS player and watch it that way, just because that's how I remember watching. I don't remember watching in the theater. I remember being one of the rentals that we got. And I don't know, there's just something weird that seeing it all bright and shiny on Blu-ray and 4K and everything they've got today, I don't
There's
want
no
that.
history behind it.
I don't want that. No, and some of the tapes that you had, as a kid, I still have a few left over from childhood and just my parents passing them on and grabbing them. But there's certain movies where you stopped and rewound the tape at a certain spot, and when you get to that, you get the weird, wacky stuff on the screen going on.
Issues,
So there's just something. See, and that's kind of where I'm at. I don't necessarily collect for the covers or anything like that, but if I see a movie on VHS that I remember as a kid renting, I'm like, I'm going to buy that. I'm going to actually watch it.
So that kind of begs the question: is ideally Back to the Future would look better in 4K, I think, but you've got that nostalgic factor, and like you said, you there's something magical about watching it on VHS. That's kind of the point that I've gotten to, that if it's let's say a copy of Garbage Pail Kids or something, which plug Adam and I did a great Sequelquest on. If let's say that I love that movie so much, I want to get a copy of it. If the VHS is going for like $35 and the Blu-ray is on sale on Amazon for like $9, I mean, I'm gonna have to go with the Blu-ray. What point do you kind of give them up and just say, all right, I'm just gonna stick with the Bluray?
It's hard. Well, because the issue is like we said, also like a lot of people focus on streaming, right? Like Amazon right now, Amazon Prime Video has amazing selection for cult 80s movies. They have the weirdest stuff up there, and it's beautiful. But the thing is, when you stop that subscription, you don't have access anymore. And when you have the Blu-ray, like Blu-ray is good, because you have that pristine copy. But like something about owning like the original version and having that physical copy, like I don't trust streaming media because it can go away. And if you read the fine print, iTunes or whoever can take it from you at any time, even if you paid money for it. You're like, it's an extended rental essentially. So to me, I love to have it, and then have this version is extra special because there's an origin to it. There's like there's something there that's extra special. But like, for example, you talked about like how much are you willing to pay? Like at what point are you going to really get into it? And so to me, like what am I willing to pay? Well, there are tapes that I have paid, under $100 for, but getting close to. And that is only because I had a very specific mission this year. And that was, I love Troop Beverly Hills. I love the Shelley Long movie. It's it's top 3 all time for me. And so I still have like the original copy we bought from the warehouse, so I have that. It's still in the original case with all of that. But then I've had like other copies over the years, and I just said, you know what? I want to be, inspired by everybody's great friend and mentor in this field, Sean Robert, who shows us how to do it right with Monster Squad. And today is the 32nd anniversary, so happy birthday, Monster Squad. But I just decided I want to get every copy of Troop Beverly Hills that was ever released, every version. I have, the Laserdisc. I have every VHS clamshell case. There's multiple variations of the slipcase. And then I said, why don't I start getting foreign releases? I want to get the one from Italy. I want to get the one from Turkey. And I've done that now, and those tapes get a little more expensive. But again, it's like the hunt and the process of that, and the focus of saying, I may be the only one in the world, like Chad's saying earlier, like that has this collection of these tapes, that cares this much. But it means so much to me, and I literally will watch them all, even in foreign languages, because it means that much. So like, no, that's where, like I say, yes, it's expensive, but there it literally is like the hobby and a collection and a museum piece. We're archiving something.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you were talking about Troop Beverly Hills being your thing. I know that there are certain movies that if they were to be released on Blu-ray, I'd probably pick them up. But like Jason is saying, yeah, there are certain ones that you want to watch on VHS. My two are the live-action My Pet Monster movie and the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors VHS. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that.
Hosted by Robert Englund, yeah.
Hosted by Robert Englund,
yeah.
Essentially, it's a giant video scrapbook of, I want to say it was the 80s. It was either the 86 or the 87 Fangoria convention, and it's just so mind-blowing to see it because, you see this tape and, you watch how fandom was back then and right down to the terrible, homemade Freddy glove, and there's a guy dressed like Stay Puft, and it's very clear he's like wearing like a white trash bag for his his stomach. And it's so incredible, and it's something I don't think it would ever be released on Blu-ray, but that's something special that I cherish, and that's really one of the few VHS that I would just I have a DVD converter, and I've converted digitally, but there's something special about watching it on VHS. There really is. I mean, so that's certainly two tapes that I would probably consider buying on Blu-ray, but there's really only one way to watch those.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like you just want to support the fact that it even exists in that format. Please do it again for the other movies I love, but in the meantime, you're saying like I'm still going to go back to the way I prefer to watch it. Yeah.
It's kind of like The Wizard, which I don't know if you guys know I'm a big fan of. But
hey.
Yeah, learn something new every day. On the original Universal Studios VHS, at the beginning you have that the little crawl that's like saying Universal Studios Orlando coming in 1990, and it's on so many Universal Studio tapes. I kind of, whenever, I've spent 30 years watching this movie, and that's how I've always watched it. So, when the Blu-ray comes out, which, by the way, Shout Factory, if you're listening, give me a call. It's going to be kind of weird to go from, the VHS to that Blu-ray, which I'm obviously going to buy like 70 copies of, but,
But seeing Lucas's mullet in HD, can you handle it?
Oh my gosh, I'm dying of excitement right now.
You'll be able to see what is in the reflection of that girl's glasses during the competition. What's her name?
Jenny Lewis or
no, not Jenny. Yeah, the girl he's playing against.
The weird looking one.
Yeah.
That just kind of angry when she loses. By the way, watching her play those games, honey, you were gonna lose anyway. Just accept.
See, for me, up until it was last Christmas that I finally got the original Star Wars trilogy on something else besides VHS. I had back in college, like 96, 97, whenever the special edition came out in theaters, they released the 3 in a special edition pack, and I remember buying that for $30. I still have it. It's a weird case. It's like 2 pieces that's triangular, and there's the bottom is black and the top is like gold and has the Star Wars logo, and they fit together, and had the 3 tapes in there. And just for the longest time, that was pretty much the only reason why I kept my VCR, was to watch those movies. Wow. That and the Charlie Brown trilogy, I'll call it. Christmas, Great Pumpkin, Thanksgiving. Those were on VHS too. I still have not converted those to DVD. But it wasn't until last year when the Steelbook or Blu-ray or whatever it was, I can't remember now. I think it is the Steelbook that I have, were like $5. And I was like, well, okay, I'll finally convert it over. But I'm not going to get rid of the other one. It's just, I don't know. Since I bought it, I remember buying it and how much I bought it for. And it's weird now when I popped in those Blu-rays that they didn't have that little beginning part of the special edition has in 1977 George Lucas did this and changed the way we look at movies, and it goes into like this little mini documentary about each of the ones of the original trilogy. I missed that. I mean, there's not even in the bonus features on these stupid steel books. So I don't know. I see where you're getting at, where you're used to watching it in a certain way. You've got even the previews that before each movie, you're like, okay, so we get this, we get that pirating video with the people, weird kind of
in a back alley.
You wouldn't
steal a car.
Wouldn't steal a car.
That was like on every video.
This is not a victimless crime.
Yeah, I don't know. I like that. Maybe it's because I was cheap too, and I just didn't want to convert. But and just what you were saying about the digital copies and everything too. They go for so much, more, sometimes even more than the actual. If you're going out to buy like a Blu-ray disc, so if you're good with it, and if you're still, don't mind the quality that is VHS, why convert? Keep it.
Yeah, might as well. And I got to say, like, I have one more story as we're wrapping up here, because what you brought up earlier, with your KFC video and all that, like the few stores that manage to stay in business, right? Like there are rental stores. Like I lived in Phoenix for many years, and literally across the street from my house was a rental store. Now they had converted all to DVD, but just the idea of having a rental store I could go into was exciting. And yet there are those people here and there. These are pockets. This was an experience I had, I thought was reserved only for Matt and Jay, for the Purple Stuff podcast, being able to get out there and find video stores that still have VHS tapes. But it happened to me about 2 years ago. My buddy Jeff, he's like, hey, in my town, or just in the town next to my town, there is a video store called Larson Video that still sells VHS tapes, and they still rent them. And I was like, what? So I drove up. He lives like, 4 or 5 hours away. So I had to drive out to his place, and we got up and we had this whole retro weekend. We went to garage sales, we went to antique stores, and then he's like, the final moment was going to this video store. So we walk in, and it's everything you wanted it to be. It's got the wood paneling everywhere. It's got dusty shelves, it's got, all the VHS tapes everywhere that you see. They got a whole like discount section, the previously viewed section still, in addition to the ones that were still on the shelf. So I'm going in there. I picked up a few tapes just to start. I was like, Karate Kid Part 3, I'll take that. This weird movie called My Chauffeur with the guy who played Flash Gordon. Like that was random. But then, so as we're walking around and we're talking to the guy, it's like, yeah, I've been doing this for 35 years. He showed me his old ordering catalogs, like this is when Predator came out. This is when Lost Boys came out, you see what the tapes are going for. But I went to the kids section, and I'm walking around there, and I'm looking just down, because it was like next to a window. All the tapes were like faded Ninja Turtles and whatever else. And at the very bottom in the corner, covered in cobwebs, was a copy of Rainbow Bright and the Star Stealer.
Wow.
And so but it was pristine. It still had the plastic on it, like, the cellophane wrapping, and it literally had not been rented, had to have been at least for 20 years, 25 years. And so I just picked that up. It was not one that was for sale, but I just picked it up, and I was like, how much would you let me have this for? He's like, how much are you going to give me? I was like, $5. He's like, sold. And so I got this they may have been rented once ever and shown, and it's so beautiful. And the thing that was extra special is my wife, obviously, I got 800 VHS tapes in our house. She's like, what are you doing? But I bring this one home. She's like, oh, that was one of my favorite movies. That was one of the few movies we had for our VHS growing up. And so she loved it, showed it to our kids. So it brought the family together finally, in this hobby.
Finally paid off.
It was a beautiful, beautiful day. And the saddest part is, though, I just literally yesterday, my buddy, he texted me a picture. Larson Video, out of business sale. They're going out of business in a month. I can't believe it. They were hanging on. It's not going to last.
Oh my gosh.
So sad.
You know what's funny is I can share that same exact story, because we had one just 2 years ago in Rochester here, and it was called Hyatt's Classic Video. And I had been kind of told about this place for a long time, and one day I had off of work, and I was just like, I'll go try this out. Same thing, posters everywhere, even the little rental slip, the little window, and this guy had been holding on to this store for 35 years, and I'm looking through everything, and I picked up the Elvira tape that you have. I picked up
the Origin. Okay.
Yes, yeah. And I picked up a few other tapes, and all the kids' tapes were facing the window of the plaza, so they were all faded to heck, and it was just, the day before my birthday, I found out this was 2 years ago that it had closed, and I had for too long, I was just like, I should go back there. The guy and I really hit it off, and he was willing to sell tapes like for $5 each. Which normally I don't like paying $5 for a tape, but I at least knew what I was getting. And then it sadly closed. I will say there are 2 video rental stores still in Rochester that have VHS and DVD.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I
bring them Christmas presents this year, Chad.
I
Let
will.
them know they're appreciated.
They'll get my money and Christmas presents. And they're owned by a mom and pop. It's usually I've had this store for all this time. I own the land, and the space is actually mine. So I've never really wanted to give it up. So.
Jason, I got to tell you this. This is a future excursion that the Retro Network crew could go on, because your co-host on the Retro Network podcast,
yes,
Mickey, we had this conversation last year, and he and I were going late into the night making these plans. He had intel, we'll call it intel because this was an operation, on a video store that he used to rent from that had gone out of business, 10, 15 years ago. But reportedly, they just sealed everything up in that store, and they still owned it, and they never did anything with it. So he was like calling everybody in town. He's like, do you know the guy? Okay, how do I find him? Where can he say? And he was working for weeks just trying to get in there, because he's like, I know they got the old WWF wrestling tapes. I know they got these horror movies, all this stuff. And so we were just like licking our lips. We're getting all excited. I'm checking it with him. I was like, what'd you find out? And then it just like petered out. He just couldn't get them to agree to meet with him. He was going to take out a loan to buy up the stock. It's just
my gosh.
So you got to ask him about this on the show.
Okay.
And maybe we can get that reignited. We'll find a way. We'll do some Kickstarter. Retro Network. I'll get together and go out to this, have a party, and find your favorite VHS tapes,
Now that would be a weekend. We need to hit that store. I need to go back to my hometown and break into that Pizza Hut that's sitting there.
Yeah.
And then we'll find something else.
Cups.
Yeah, we'll find like an abandoned Ames or Hills or something, and we'll just make a weekend of
that'd be beautiful.
The
retro experience.
Yeah. Wow. That's great.
Well, I was going to say, maybe as we go out, Jason, the one thing I was going to ask is, Chad, I know you're not collecting as heavily now, but if you had to, say, these, this is something like a holy grail or something you're still looking for, what would it be?
Okay. This is the most random, and I've kind of given up on it because it is so specific, and I'm sure it's in a dumpster or a landfill or it's been burned. Well, okay, there's 2 technically. One of them is, they're both from that Vidmark video that I kind of talked about earlier. One of them is Survivor Series 1990, the WWF tape, but I'd wanted to have that Vidmark video label because I rented that so many times as a kid. Gosh, I'd give anything to have that. But the other one was whenever there was a time at Vidmark Video, and we kind of briefly mentioned it. When Mary Lou Prom Night 2 came out, they had put the poster up, and it was on the main wall of the video store. And I just remember going in there and staring at it because this poster was just so in your face. It had Mary Lou, burning in a locker, and I could just, every time we went in there while it was up, I couldn't take my eyes off it. So for me, I would just want those tapes that were there at Vidmark Video. I've had both before, but even if I could just have a Vidmark Video label and just slap it on these tapes, I don't know. But those would kind of be my just to find a tape from Vidmark Video in Bowie, Maryland. If anybody ever finds one, and just I don't even care what tape it would be as long as it has that label. Pretty much, yeah. Those would kind of be it for me, you know.
Ah, that's beautiful. Yeah, getting back to the original.
Yeah.
Jason, I know you're not much of a collector, but is there one in particular that's a special nostalgia tape for you that what you never owned, rented often?
I know, well, and you guys know the market better than I do, but the movie Rad, that was just that was never released to like DVD or Blu-ray or anything, right?
Nope, not officially, no.
So, yeah, I mean, finding a copy of that would be like a holy grail, right?
I have very bad news. I do the McDonald's sale out here in Rochester. It's like a charity. I found one for 25 cents.
Wow.
Like $30.
Just a former rental copy?
Nope, not even a rental copy.
Wow.
No kidding.
I wish I would have known that you wanted that. I would have gladly just.
Well, again, I'm not like actively seeking any out. I'm not going to go out to eBay or any place like that. I just love going to thrift stores and seeing what's new, what's just kind of catches my eye. Yeah. So, finding something like that would just really get me pumped up. Like last year we were home, we were at a Goodwill, and I found a copy. It was a 2-episode tape of Dino Saucers of all things. Wow. And I'm not a huge collector, so I like taking pictures of just the covers or something. Hey, look what I found,
Yeah.
People are like, why did you pick it up? Well, that's why. I'm not really a collector. And what about like the pre-special edition Star Wars tapes? Are those like easy to find?
They're still pretty common. The CBS Fox copies. I have them here. You find those pretty regularly. That was a pretty popular, I think, even with like the subscription services and things like that. You should be able to pick those up.
That would be something like I said, I got the trilogy, the special edition in the later 90s, and I haven't watched like the original version of Star Wars in forever. So it's, I don't know. That would be something I would probably like to have or find out in the wild. Just those three from back in the day, their original versions.
I actually I haven't watched them in years, but I have the letterbox. It's like the 3 movies, and it came with a like the making of Star Wars video, and it also it came in this weird box with a hologram on it, and it also came with like a book about George Lucas, and I actually don't plan on buying any Star Wars Blu-rays because these are just really all I need. So I mean, honestly, it's all, it's like you said with Back to the Future, and we were talking about other tapes. It's really all how you look at it, and your personal preference and how you want to view these. And for me, if I never buy Star Wars on Blu-ray, I'm fine with that because I have these, and they mean something to me.
I feel the same way about Weekend at Bernie's. I'll never buy that on DVD, Blu-ray, whatever. Perfect. It's always going to be my VHS tape that I pop in to watch Weekend at Bernie's.
Now, is it a VHS tape recorded off like HBO some week?
No, it's just
okay.
Just a regular copy. I do have it. Like I said, there's some out there in the garage that have not probably been watched since the early 90s that I recorded off TV that I really need to go through and just see what I have. But that was one. I don't know. There's just random ones that I was like, I just got to keep my VCR and plug it in. All right. Well, you got anything else to add, you guys, before we want to go ahead and get out of here?
No, I think we covered it, man. This is a great conversation.
Good. Great memories. Gosh, I kind of want to go to the thrift store now.
Do it. It's nice therapy too.
I'm motivated. Yeah, you got me motivated. So
I do have one thing to say, and it's directly to Shout Factory, which I do have a good relationship with the people at Shout Factory, so I don't know how they'll take this, but please release Rad and Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2 already.
Okay.
That's all I got to say.
You're on record.
I've been on record for like years of saying that no one ever wants to listen, so I'm okay with that.
Like you do to me. That's at Horror Movie Barbecue on Twitter. No, but guys, man, this was fun. I just love, like I said, just kind of sitting back and listening to you guys go back and forth, because when you get heavy into collecting, not just VHS, but anything, you just get so passionate about it. You can hear it in your voices as you're trading stories, and you're trading stories about trading. That was really fun to listen to. So
yeah, and the last thing I'll just mention, if anybody is looking just to understand how, you think 800 is crazy, there are some great documentaries. I have both of them on DVD because they were not released on VHS, but one of them was shot on a camcorder, which is awesome.
Was that Please Be Kind?
Oh, well, yeah, there's one that's called Rewind This.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, which is like the full history of VHS and beta, just home media and all that. But also Adjust Your Tracking is called The Untold Story of the VHS Collector. That's where you will see people who have literally created a video store in their basement, or they have just shelves, just their whole house is VHS tapes. A lot of people you've heard of, they're probably, if you're in the market for learning more about it, but they're just highly entertaining, and I watch them over and over again just to not aspirational, I wouldn't say. I don't think I'm going to take it that far, but
you don't want to pay $700 for Tales from the Quadet Zone, and then. Okay, I'm gonna make this quick, guys. There's a scene where some guy is like, "Oh yeah, I paid $700 for this. What is this, guys?" And I'm just like, "You could have gotten it on DVD for like 30. Come on, man. Come on."
Isn't there a documentary where a bunch of guys are going out just trying to collect every single copy of Jerry Maguire or something?
I think that was pitched. Was it ever produced? I know it was being. I think it was being pitched that they were going to do the documentary. I don't know if it was ever really
featured in that documentary though. Yes. Adjust Your Tracking, so you see their collection. Yeah, their boxes and boxes of Jerry Maguire.
I've seen a couple of those documentaries, Adam. They are pretty great, and the people that are on there too. I could just listen to them all day.
I got asked to be on one of those, by the way.
Oh yeah?
No, I'm kidding.
But he's putting his name out there, folks.
No. That's for the Wizard, by the way.
Yeah.
Shout Factory, call me. Again.
Fred Savage. Fred Savage, actor. Chad Young, fan. Next scene, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
And Jenny Lewis, call me. I love Troop Beverly Hills. Well, it all comes back to the Wizard.
Yes. We'll both get on that commentary.
Yes.
All right, guys. Well, it was a pleasure. This was really fun in our first episode here of TRN Talk, just talking VHS memories and collecting and everything. So appreciate you guys inviting me along for the ride. All right. Well, for Chad and for Adam, this is Jason. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will talk to you next time.